let's start with a few moments of breathing meditation, and then we'll set the motivation and continue from there. Now to set your motivation. So let's think that may we be able to bring greatest happiness to all sentient beings. May this session be a cause for us to be able bring such happiness to sentient beings by way of helping them to remove all their sufferings, all their dissatisfaction. Means of us attaining the fully awakened state of a Buddha. Follows as part of this course, of this study kind of meditation course, so we go through the 3 jewels or anything that is mentioned in the Namro Chemple or in Maitreya's text, Maitreya's Ornament for Clear Realizations, but based on a commentary on that by someone called Benjen Sonantapa. He's the textbook author of, for instance, Döbong Hosling, Döbong Monastery, Gandhi Shatse, and some other institutions, some nunneries, the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics. So each monastery has like a commentary that they follow that explains some of the ideas that we learn here, but of course based on Maitreya's text, or of course Lamrim Chemo, like Lama Tsongkhapa's. Okay. And so the first part is introducing the 3 jewels, as they're called. They're called jewel in English, not because it's not the translation of the Tibetan word, that's the translation of the Sanskrit word. The word ratna, which is jewel. So that's the word they use in Sanskrit. The word that is used in Tibetan is guncho. Gun means rare, chok means precious. As in, like, not many people are Buddhas, or there's not that much Dharma around in general. And so the Sangha, for instance, also there's not that much Sangha. So with regard to the 3, they're rare and they're precious. They're seen as precious in the sense that through reliance on them, we can actually remove our own suffering. First reduce our own suffering and eventually remove it. Now, a lot of what we go through is we talk about the qualities of this and the qualities of that. That's not supposed to be some devotional practice. It's not supposed to be, well, just believe what you hear and just take it on. Because as you may know, in Buddhism, you have faith. There is faith. And here, faith, actually there are 3 types of faith. And when I say faith here, I mean the first type. Believing faith. Are you all aware of the 3 types of faith? First is belief. The next one sometimes is called pure faith or joyful faith. And the last one is aspirational faith. So believing faith means you believe in something that right now you cannot know. So we all have believing faith of certain things around us, like the day you were born, your birthday. You cannot know, you don't have any memory of your day of birth. You had no way to find out this was the date, so you believe you were born on that day. So you believe your parents, who had no reason to lie to you, that this is the day you were born. And then lots of other examples. In fact, I believe most of what we say we know, we only believe. We say, I know such and such because I Googled it and someone said it was this on Wikipedia. That is just knowing that someone said so, but that's not knowing the fact. So we use the word I know, I recognized, in a very loose way. And seriously, most of it, we don't know. We hear it on the news, our teachers tell us, like in school, even what we learned in school, we learned the information, but we don't really know for sure. Do you know for sure the globe is round? There's 2 ways to find out. You can directly perceive it by getting onto a spaceship and see for yourself. And I don't think there's anyone in here who's done that. No, I don't think so. Done it? Not yet, exactly, not yet. And the other way to find out is to take logical reasoning, do the mathematics, do the science. Anyone bothered to do that? Why would you, right? So enough, I believe it. It's okay, I totally believe it. So we have believing faith in the fact, I should say, that the globe is round. Okay. Now, when people say, oh, faith, should we all have just faith? There is such an aversion for blind faith, which is actually appropriate. Blind faith is not a good idea. So a lot of criticism of people having blind faith in religion. But honestly, we didn't get rid of the blind faith, except we no longer have blind faith in religion. We have it in science now. You know, a scientist tells us, preferably with the Nobel Peace, not Nobel Peace, but some Nobel Prize to his name, and of course we believe it. The fancier the degree, the more likely, oh yeah, he must be right. And we don't take the time to check what he or she says, if it agrees with reality. No, we just believe it. So if we criticize blind faith in other religions, we should check first how quick we are ready to assume this is right because someone said so. So first of all, we have believing faith. We have a lot of believing faith. We believe most of the things that we think we know. Secondly, most of it is blind faith. Let's face it, because someone told us. From a Buddhist point of view, that's the definition of blind faith. Without any reasoning, without any analysis, you just believe it because someone tells you, because you hear that. But can you wait? Yeah. Okay. So, therefore, faith, first type is believing faith. That's the first type. And there's the type that is blind faith, or without any reason, believing something without a reason. And then there's believing faith that is based on reasoning. That's really important. From a Buddhist point of view, that's the kind of faith we should aspire towards, at least when it comes to believing faith. The second type, I prefer to call it joyous faith. That is like when you, like a devotional kind of faith, as in like, do you need anything? Do you need a tissue or something? Yes. Here, there's a whole package here. Oh, okay. You can have those if you want. I usually don't use them. Okay, please go ahead. Sure, take the whole thing. Take as much.
Thank you.
Anyway, so joyous faith is like when you meet a person you find really inspiring, like maybe a Lama, like this Holiness the Dalai Lama, for instance, and you're full of joy seeing them. You feel inspired. You feel moved. You feel devoted, if you like, right? That's joyous faith. And then aspirational faith is that you aspire towards reaching such a state, right? Like wanting to be like the Dalai Lama, wanting to be like the Buddha. That's called aspirational faith. I don't think we usually call that faith, but it's said to be a kind of faith, right? So first you hear a teaching, so it's a bit like that. First you hear a teaching, then the person who teaches it or who lives those teachings, even more important, who lives those teachings, so you have believing faith, as in like you believe in the truth of what you hear. That's believing faith. And then the next one is joyous faith, having joyous faith in the sense of being joyful in the presence of a person you find inspiring, and then you want to become like them. That's aspirational faith. Okay, those three. Now here we're talking mainly about believing faith, the first of those three. And again, as I said, it has to be based on reasoning. It has to make sense to you. So when we hear about the qualities of a Buddha, always check, does it make sense to you? I mean, I could give some of the reasons, but the reasons are pretty much removal of anything that's extra in the mind. So a Buddha is someone who's actualized his or her fullest potential. Therefore, there's no obstruction. So we talk about the obstructions having been removed. So there's no hinderness, there's no obstruction to loving all sentient beings unconditionally, to knowing, to knowledge of what the other person needs, what they aspire towards, what their interests are, etc. So if you keep that in mind, that's this pure mind that is now manifested for a Buddha, and that's where the qualities come from. Then when you hear this, it's not like, they have this great quality, just hearing like a list of great qualities and you go, maybe not. It should make sense, and if it doesn't, you should say so. So there's going to be like a lot of explanation, but the reason is, if there really is such a person, we should know, because then we know this is reliable, this is something we can rely on, and before we get to the result, when we see it for ourselves, oh, this is really beneficial, well, at least before that we already feel motivated to practice what they teach. That's one of the reasons why all this is presented. But also faith, of course, has to be temporary. Faith should be temporary, not just based on reasoning, but temporary. Faith in Buddhism is temporary until you come to know yourself. So you shouldn't have faith forever. I mean, like a Buddha doesn't have faith. The Buddha doesn't have believing faith. The Buddha knows. So that would be the final stage. But even before you get there, people ask me about reincarnation. You relatively easy come to know in reincarnation. When I say relatively easy, there are things that are more difficult to understand. So with reincarnation, for instance, you just need a basis. You need to have some basic knowledge of the mind, of its working, of the mind one moment giving rise to the next, etc. And then when the reasonings are presented to you, you can actually come to know that reincarnation exists. It's similar to, for instance, based on a certain type of smoke, we can reason, we can come to understand that there's fire. You would agree, right? I don't need to go into my neighbor's house when I'm very familiar, especially if you're a fireman, you're a firewoman, you know about fire and there's different types of smoke. You can tell from the smoke, you can tell what kind of fire is in your neighbor's house, right? So here, you can infer, that is, you come to realize, you come to know based on reasoning. But do you need to know about fire and smoke? Yeah, you do. If you don't know anything about fire and nothing about smoke, the reasoning is not going to help you. Is that the reasoning that establishes the existence of fire in a place? The smoke does that? Do that? Yes. But only if you have a basic knowledge that enables you to come to that understanding based on that reasoning. So the same is true for reincarnation. There is very clear and very sophisticated reasoning that can establish the existence of reincarnation, but only if you have certain basic understanding. Only then can the reasoning be effective and you can come to realize yourself. And in the meantime, if it makes sense to you, you may choose to believe in reincarnation, but only if it makes sense to you. Don't just take it on. I mean, you could take it on. It's not like saying blind faith is forbidden. No one is allowed to have. No, it's not that, but it's not encouraged because it's not reliable. If you have blind faith, then one day you believe this, and the next day someone comes along and tells you the opposite, and you're swayed just as easily. So faith based on reasoning should be stable. So those two things are very important. So we talk a lot about faith here. But what is faith? Two qualities. And here believing faith, mainly believing faith. Joy's faith could also be part of it, but we are focusing mainly on belief. So two qualities. Based on reasoning. Secondly, only you should have faith in X, Y, and Z, whatever that is, only for the time being, and make an effort to come to an experience of whatever you believe in, so that you can let go, believe, faith, and now know for yourself. And that's, of course, most reliable. Does that make sense? All right. So having said this, what is Buddha jewel? What does the Buddha refer to? So we say Buddha or Buddha jewel, like the three jewels. That's just how they refer to. So whether you say Buddha or Buddha jewel, it's the same thing. So the Buddha refers to enlightened beings, as well as all their qualities. And those qualities, they are described as what is called kayas. Kaya is usually translated as body, but when you look at the bodies, the qualities of a Buddha, usually they're kind of summarized by way of saying 2 kayas, or 3 kayas, or 4 kayas, even 5 kayas. They're actually qualities, really. I mean, sometimes they refer to the person, him or herself, sometimes they refer to the physical body, sometimes to the mind, sometimes to the absence of certain faults that we still have, but they've eliminated. So really, I look at the kayas as qualities, a way of describing certain characteristics, certain good qualities a Buddha has. And sometimes it's hard to say, like the absence of suffering, etc., that's a quality, because a quality we think of impermanent, something that is non-static, that's changing moment by moment, while an absence of misapprehension of reality, afflictions, etc., that's a permanent, that's a static state, right? Anyway, so whatever you want to call it, like a kaya, yeah, quality, characteristic. Anyway, so Buddha, the Buddha jewel, the object of refuge being the Buddha, it refers to those qualities, and the Buddha, him or herself. I wish there was something more than he, she, it, because the Buddha is none of those. It's funny to say he, it's funny to say she, because it's beyond normal or ordinary gender, but it is also bizarre. So, anyway. But the Buddha is only a secondary refuge. And what's so difficult is that we don't have Buddhas around, really, in the sense, like, not obvious to us that there are Buddhas around. Like, not Buddha Shakyamuni, who was known as the Buddha. But of course we have Buddhas around in the form of different lamas. But it's hard to see those qualities because the way our mind works, we see ordinariness in everything. Because we're ordinary. We look at ourselves as ordinary. So we see everyone else in that light. I mean, if Buddha himself, Buddha Shakyamuni, sat next to us, just look at just a guy. Right? Probably see some faults. Right? So, of course, the ordinary people have faults. But even if they were a Buddha, we would still see faults. Right? It's interesting how people react, like my relatives, how they react to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's embarrassing to say. But remember this, like when my uncle, like he's not into Buddhism, but he's very curious about it. And I call him every time. It's kind of like I have to call him. So I do. I always call him, otherwise he gets offended. So every time I'm there, I call him and we chat. And he asks me, and sometimes he Googles things. So he heard Abhidharma. And he's like, what is Abhidharma? So anyway, and then he says, like, what is it? He asked me at one point, what is it about Buddhism? What is it about the whole thing? I said, just look at the Dalai Lama, how amazing it is. He's like, I don't like the Dalai Lama. He smiles too much. What? He was suspicious, he kind of likes the Pope, the one before, I forget his name, the German one, he never smiled. If they smile, they may have an agenda. I guess that was the sense, right? Really, first I didn't get it. I was like, are you kidding me? You're complaining about someone smiling? And he's like, yeah, but he's probably got some agenda there, right? Like in the West, sometimes people think if a person smiles too much, they have an agenda. They should be serious. If they're like a religious leader, they should really look dignified and serious. I don't know, that's that view. At first I didn't get it, but then I looked at the Pope, who was like, walking around. And I was like, okay, so for him, I'm not criticizing that, but he's, he hardly ever cracked a smile. So, when he was still the Pope, the German one. So then I thought, so I get that. To him, a sincere person was someone who doesn't smile. I know the Koreans, guys don't smile that much because it's seen as like a weakness. So they keep a straight face. I mean, traditionally, I don't know nowadays. Anyway, so that was interesting from my uncle. And then one time my dad had an audience with His Holiness when His Holiness came to Hamburg. Like the whole family actually did. But that was my mom, my stepmom, my dad, and myself. And so it was just a very quick affair. But my dad is in a wheelchair. So His Holiness was very kind to him. It was really amazing. And then when His Holiness was done, he had taken my dad's hand and put his forehead to my dad's forehead. My dad was totally blissed out. Didn't even expect it. He had kind of misunderstood. He thought we had a group audience and didn't realize it was an audience just for him. He sat there with his flowers. He gave His Holiness his flowers. And His Holiness did this beautiful, beautiful blessing, gave that to him. And when he was done, His Holiness said, okay, let's take a picture. Like, he's very quick. Like, let's not waste time. Picture, photograph, picture. So my sister watches that, and she said, there you go. He wants the picture with the guy in the wheelchair. I was, like, shocked. I said to her, but that's not for us. It's not like he's got a photo album with, like, people in wheelchairs. Look, this is a... right? It's like, how could you get it so wrong? She thought he was doing it to add to his collection of, me with the guys in wheelchairs. He doesn't have a picture of that, right? So, like, there is, like, this incredible man who does this amazing... There's a whole video of how he... With my dad, it's so beautiful. I showed it to her. It was like, now she's really going to be convinced how amazing. And all she sees is His Holiness says, photograph. And I'm like, oh gosh, where am I going to start to explain to her? I tried to, but I don't know whether I succeeded. See, so even you have someone so pure and so amazing, and still people see faults right away. Probably because that's why she would get a picture with a guy in a wheelchair. I mean, she's not listening to this, so it's fine. But this is what most people, right? You take, like politicians, the guy with a wheelchair. All right. So all I'm saying, we all assume the worst of people, right? We do, in a way we do, right? If I'm very selfish, and I am very selfish, since I'm very selfish, I assume other people are too. Right? If I were like really selfless and I would assume other people are like that too. Okay? So our problem is the Buddhas could be, you could all be Buddhas. You're all here for me to help me to become enlightened. So I accumulate merit, especially in front of Buddhas, right? So to be, it could be, honestly, how do I know? Seriously. Yeah, but I wouldn't see it. I wouldn't be able to see it. And you would not want me to see it because I'd be so intimidated. I'd be like, please, you talk. Okay. So, therefore, the point is, Buddhas are around us, right? Buddhas, enlightened beings are all around us. And so, therefore, these qualities, it's helping us to see them, as in like, not as human, they're just ordinary, but with the Dalai Lama, for instance, with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or Lama Zopa Rinpoche, or Jadu Rinpoche, these amazing lamas, if you're a little bit more in their presence, then you get already a slight glimpse. Oh, they're just not like me. They're just not like me. That much is clear. So, and then from there, more and more, and then you see, you're introduced to those qualities, and then you check. You check. With Lama Zopa Rinpoche, it was quite interesting. Just right after my studies, I hadn't seen Lama Zopa Rinpoche all this time during my study. Only one time. One time I saw Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and I just heard he'd become a vegetarian. He'd been a vegetarian for a while. And I was carrying a bag full of meat momos. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche is walking towards the temple. So there was like a scooter behind me. I threw the momos in the scooter and I waited, hoping no one would drive away with my momos. But I was too embarrassed to have meat momos in my hand while saying hello to a vegetarian lama. That was my only time. So once she was gonna go my momos, and that was the only time. But then when my studies were over, I went to Toshita, where she was there, and he gave a teaching. And I had the great fortune to have an audience. And to me, I felt Lama Zopa Rinpoche is the living embodiment of what I learned. It was so strong, that feeling that I felt. He just lives what's in here. And that was so beautiful. It really touched me. And of course, I didn't get the full scale of Rinpoche, who he is, like no way. But just that little bit, I thought, wow, this is not just theory. There's someone living it, right? And of course, His Holiness, but we don't really get audiences with His Holiness. We don't get to sit so close to teaching. So with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, had a special effect on me. Anyway, so having said all this, when we talk about the Buddhas, now, I usually think, if the Dalai Lama is not a Buddha, what else does a Buddha have to do? What more did Buddha Shakyamuni do? That's how I usually think, right? We think, he's a Buddha, he's a Bodhisattva, I don't know. But honestly, did Buddha Shakyamuni do anything more than His Holiness did? I don't know, right? His Holiness traveled further, that's for sure. But anyway, we can't say. But I believe they're all around us, so Buddha jewel. And then there's the Dharma jewel. Now, that is the main refuge, and that is a little difficult in the sense that there's a strict version of the Buddha jewel, of the Dharma, and there's a less strict version of what the Dharma means. And we usually choose the less strict version. We think the Dharma refers to the teaching, okay? So that's usually how it's explained. But actually, strictly speaking, according to Maitreya's text called Uttara Tantra, it actually, strictly speaking, refers to the path consciousnesses in the continuum of anyone who's reached a state of an Arya, the path consciousnesses, the truth of the path, if you like, or Arya path consciousnesses, and cessations in their continuum. Do you even know what that means? We don't necessarily know what that means, right? Basically, a path consciousness in the continuum of an Arya. Arya is the